So we're talking about the shoulder season. So I'm Thibault. I'm the head of product marketing here at PriceLabs. I'm also the founder of Rental Scale Up, now called RSU by PriceLabs. It's a short-term rental industry news website. We talk about market data, what Airbnb is up to, these kind of things. Um, Obviously, we are PriceLabs, part of PriceLabs. I work at PriceLabs. As we know, we are revenue management and dynamic pricing solution. Welcome to our customers who are attending this as well. We every day we price now more than 600,000 listings, yeah, in the world, which is pretty cool. And as I said, we also provide free resources like this event right now. And this event, as I said, is recorded. So you get the recording and you also be able to find it on our podcasts. It's a audio and video podcast. Subscribe to it. Either the RevLab podcast by PriceLabs, all about revenue management, or the Vacation Rental Scale Up podcast, which is more about industry news. So that's my plug I had to do. So today, talking about shoulder seasons. So our speakers, and that's the next slide to see who's speaking today, will be talking about what is even a shoulder season, right? And what is it in their own market? Has it changed in recent years? We'll be talking about how they're seeing now this year. How is that shoulder season, for example, shaping up in their markets? Then we'll talk about owners because we'll talk about shoulder season when you have to be more flexible and sometimes it comes down to, and well, I want to be flexible, but I do need to convince my owners. So we'll talk about how they do this. And then we'll talk about other topics than pricing or length of stay. We'll talk about marketing, distribution, all these things that, of course, have big impact on how well you'll perform during the shoulder season. And last, each of the speakers will give us a final piece of advice on what you could be doing. So hopefully that's enticing to you. So quickly, I'll show you the faces here, go through the official title, but they will introduce themselves. I will stop the slide. So we have Eduardo Mandri. He's the founder, CEO of Angel Host. Jessica Mollard, she's a performance manager at the OVO Network. And Kyle Driskell is senior solutions consultant at PriceLabs. I will stop the slides right now and make sure that we, in this order, Eduardo, Jessica, Kyle, can introduce themselves. Let's get started. Eduardo.
Perfect. Thank you, Thibault. Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, evening, depending on what part of the world you're in. Eduardo Mandri, co-founder and CEO of Angel Host. We help property managers and owners worldwide take care of their pricing strategy and listing optimization strategy. We operate more than 1,500 listings in 15 countries around the world. And really looking forward to sharing with you our experiences and what we do to optimize occupancy and revenue during the low season.
Great to have you, Eduardo, and great to have Angel Host here. Jessica, how about you?
Hi, everyone. So I'm Jessica, Performance Manager at OVO Network. So at OVO Network, we specialize in the short-term rental activity of high-end properties in the French Alps. So we have two very defined low season periods, which are spring and autumn, which we'll get into later. And I look forward to sharing our tips with you.
Thank you, Jessica. Great to have you as well, and great to have the OVO Network representing the French Alps, a very, very interesting market as well. Kyle.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. I'm Kyle Driskell. I'm a senior solutions consultant with PriceLabs. I've been here for about 2 years. Prior to joining PriceLabs, I was a revenue manager for a large property management company. Typically, what I do in my job, I do a lot of these types of things, the webinars, looking at data, but I help a lot of our large customers kind of interpret their data, help build out their accounts. Got a couple of my customers in here today, so shout out to Ron and Christine. I see you all in there. But yeah, that's what I'm here for. I'm here to help you all understand PriceLabs, understand data as much as we can as well.
And great to have you here and you have your experience as well.
Thank you.
From before and from PriceLabs. So let's get started, and maybe let's get started with you, Eduardo, here on this one. So what is a shoulder season? What does it mean, for example, for you, because you work in different markets? How would you define the shoulder season, and how does it look like?
Absolutely. I think shoulder season is when we all suffer, right? It's that time of the year where most markets, drop. Shoulder season is different depending on the market that you're in. But it's typically the time of the year where we struggle to get bookings. And for the markets that we help manage, the Caribbean, the South, usually the shoulder season is the hurricane season, September, October, as well as in Miami, in Orlando, some parts of the States. So it's pretty much any time the demand drops. I was saying before this call that there's some lucky markets around the world that have very little shoulder season, mostly those urban markets like Madrid in Spain or Mexico City. We see very little seasonality, but for the most part, most markets have a shoulder season, and very important to optimize for that.
And have this shoulder season changed over the last years? I'm not talking about this year, that's the next question, but over the last years, would you say the definition of the shape of these shoulder seasons have changed?
I would say they're pretty constant, but the behavior of the shoulder season has changed. In some areas due to climate change, we're actually seeing shoulder season starting before or ending a little bit after. And we're also seeing changes in the booking patterns, in terms of how little in advance people book during shoulder season nowadays, which makes it challenging for revenue managers. But yes.
Thank you. Jessica, how is it in the French Alps? What are shoulder seasons like?
So as I briefly mentioned in the introduction, we have two main shoulder seasons. So we have autumn, so from mid-September until mid-December. And then it starts again in the spring, from end of April until end of June. Mainly because during winter, we have the skiing, we have the snow, we have all the winter activities. And in the summer, we have the hiking. And it's just the in-between, which is a bit less attractive. And that's where we struggle most with occupancy.
And to understand a bit better all the advice you're going to be sharing today, so how many properties do you have in the Alps? And as well as you just explained, right? It's not just ski, obviously, right? Summer. I have no clue how big summer is, for example, as well, how do you get your bookings? Maybe that can help us understand a bit.
Sure. So we work with over 200 property owners today, and summer is a big chunk of our revenue. So in August, we have occupancy rates over 70%. Over like the average occupancy rate of our portfolio is over 70%. But we really try to provide business for our owners all year round. So we spend a lot of time focusing on out of season as well.
And sorry, I'm asking again because I'm really interested in this. So who's coming during the shoulder season, right? Because we talked about some activities and we talked about winter. In your case, so who's coming for example, who do you think is going to come from September to December?
So I have my stats here. And so in autumn, 48% of our guest base are French. 16% are from Switzerland, 6% from Germany. So fairly local, I would say, in comparison to summer, for example, where we have more UK guests and guests from the Netherlands. So in out of season, it's usually a guest base that comes from closer by.
Yeah, super interesting, right? Different activities and even different, origin markets. Kyle, obviously, you working in the US, you've worked across different markets. Again, what would you define shoulder season? And I don't know, where do you see like very big shoulder season where it's very marked, for example?
Yeah, I think to me, shoulder season, I view it a little bit differently. I'm kind of a different cat. I view it as opportunity. That's the part where you can really add a little bit of extra money to the bottom line if you do it right, if you are preemptive, if you plan it out. It's a really good opportunity for you to just add a little bit of incremental revenue there. Some of the shoulders that I work with, like you said, I'm in the US, so I've got customers that are out in Palm Springs, California. I've got people up in the Pacific Northwest. A lot of my people are in the Southeast. So beach seasons, you see a lot of the shoulder seasons right before we get into the snowbird seasons, particularly where I'm at. I think if you've been paying any attention to these webinars, I'm from Tennessee, right next to the Smokies. The Smokies are one of those places where they actually kind of have a little bit of a fall peak. So when most people are hitting their shoulder and going down a little bit, Smokies is actually kind of getting a lot of occupancy and driving ADR as well. So got a little bit of experience with it all, but just looking at so many different markets, I think the main thing I can say for shoulder seasons, that's your opportunity to refine, to clean up, to fix things, and then to potentially add a little extra revenue as well.
Thanks a lot. And let's talk now about, I'm guessing that we have more than 100, close to 140 people attending, and thank you all for being here. And I can guess that we talked about, when is shoulder season. Obviously, we just heard that shoulder season could be very different. And we had a poll a bit earlier. We saw quite a few people, of course, have shoulder season is like, coming months. But quite a few people were like, no, my shoulder season is a different season. Or some people, of course, also have no shoulder season. But some people maybe here who do have a shoulder season coming up in September, in US after Labor Day, for example, may be curious to see, PriceLabs, you guys have data. What are you seeing? So maybe we could get started with this. And yes, I will go back to some slides, but we have like 5 slides. And Kyle, I'm going back to you, staying with you here, maybe to introduce a bit, share a bit some of the data we have from some key markets across the world on that. So, to get started, are we seeing this shoulder season different from the rest of the year? And we can go then into our specific markets. And I'll just sharing the slides and let you voice them over.
Yeah, absolutely. Sounds good. We'll take it, give him just a second to share up, but did review it quite a bit. And what Thibault's going to be sharing, we're kind of breaking it down by larger markets. So when we talk about the United States, we're going to talk about it as a whole US picture, not necessarily into the smaller markets. But one of the main things that we're seeing right now in the United States is a RevPAR that is coming in right now is pacing lower than it was last year. If we look over here at the graph that we've got, versus last year, we're seeing about a 7% decline for August. And currently we're at about 9% for September. October's still pretty flat right now, which is good to see. I think that's a good indicator that, hey, maybe we're going to have a strong October, get into a strong November and December as well. But for the US, kind of across the board, we're seeing RevPAR coming in, we're seeing ADRs coming in lower, we're seeing occupancy coming in lower, which is what's driving this RevPAR being lower. If you want to, Thibault, let's flip to the next one and we can take a look at Canada, which is it is performing very, very well right now. We're seeing a little bit of increase in ADRs. We're also seeing pretty much the same occupancy that we saw last year. And keep in mind, when I'm talking about this, it is very broad and general. If you're a top of the line, top of a property manager, you're probably increasing your ADR and your occupancy, so to speak. If you're not doing things right, you're probably pulling these metrics down and kind of getting them in between. But Canada is performing really, really well right now. My expectation based off the way it's performing right now is we should see growth in RevPAR kind of across the market by the time we get to the end of these months that we're looking at right here. And the next one that we've got to take a look at is in Mexico. So Mexico is following very, very much what we're seeing with the United States. The RevPAR that we're currently coming in is much lower than it was last year. The main thing that I think is pulling this down is ADRs and occupancy, or I say is the ADR that we're getting. Occupancy is not too far off right now. It is in certain markets, certain areas of Mexico. But to me, I think that ADR pull down that we're seeing, which is kind of indicative of the broader economic climate that we're seeing right now. And as we go to these other countries as well, we're just kind of hitting them very quickly, but a majority of these are going to be pacing down from last year. So if we think about what's changed since the COVID times, we had our big spikes, everybody talks about it. RevPAR has still kind of been trickling up ever since we got out of that 2022 area. We're seeing a little bit of a downward trend now. So if you think about it, we're going 2019's here, 2020's down a little bit, 2021's up, 2022's kind of normalizing, 2023's a little normalized, 2024 is getting back down to this way. So I think overall what we're seeing is professionalization is winning out. That's keeping everybody at the high end of the market performing well. Those people are not being hurt so much by the ADR and by what's happening economically. Overall speaking, though, total market, we're seeing a lot of downward trends, specifically for France. Again, what's coming in right now, we're at about 6% down for August. We're about 16% down for September. And then October, we're only comparing $14 RevPAR to $10, but that's a big percentage there that we're looking at, 28%. As we get closer to these dates and they get more bookings in there, we should see, and a lot of these European markets get a lot closer to where we finished last year. The North American markets, particularly the US and Mexico, they're going to be below where they were last year. Canada's probably going to outperform. Spain is performing decently right now. We can see, you know, it's following along the lines of where they were previous years. August is coming in a little bit lower, but not too bad. And then one that we had on there that we didn't see, and you don't need to share it if you don't want to. Italy is actually kind of performing similarly to Canada right now. We're seeing slight increases to ADR. Occupancy is performing pretty decently in August, September, and October. So overall, we're seeing very similar RevPAR to last year as well.
I did say I would mess up with my slides. Sorry about that. That's Italy. All right. Thanks for sharing this. And again, and we saw maybe all this data you can find for free if you go to pricelabs.co/str-index, STR index. You have free data across the world. You see a number of listings by country, state. It's indicative but obviously also, as well as Kai said, that's nationwide. So sometimes it's like, good to know. What I care about is my market as well, right? So let's talk about specific market. Jessica, you saw data, for example, for France. Obviously, that's just overall France. Obviously, your market is quite specific. What are you seeing in your market?
So the pace of sales for autumn is slightly behind as well, but we're entering peak booking period for autumn right now. And last year at the same date, we had already secured 48% of our bookings for autumn. So we're now right in the middle of it, and we're still expecting to secure 52% in the coming weeks. So that's what we're focusing on at the moment.
Does it mean it's going to be a bit more, people are booking later this year compared with last year?
Yeah, that's what we're anticipating.
Okay. And when you see this overall data we just saw for overall France, that's not surprising to you that France is going down like this?
To be honest, I'm only super familiar with my market, so I don't want to give my opinion otherwise.
Sure, I understand that. Eduardo, how about you? What are you seeing in the markets where you guys are very present?
We are quite strong in the US, Canada, Mexico, the Caribbean, and parts of Europe. And we have seen precisely that behavior that Kyle was mentioning. Well, we see Canada being slightly better than last year. We see all other markets having important drops. I think some of the biggest drops, we've seen them, like the data suggests, in Mexico, as well as the Caribbean. Some islands in the Caribbean, we've seen drops of 20-25% versus last year. So we're not really sure what's driving this. We just see an overall drop. We know that there's geopolitical things at play. But yes, we are definitely seeing and observing that drop. And like Kyle mentioned, it's more important than ever that we prepare well for that shoulder season and try to get as much of it booked in advance as possible, right?
So not to, be controversial here, but obviously Canada is doing well. Is Canadians staying in Canada and booking domestically instead of going to the US, for example? What do you think that's what's happening?
Not to get too political, but yes, there's a big backlash from Canadians not wanting to travel to the US. So northern states, we see a big drop in Vermont, New York, all the Canadians that used to drive there during the summer, well, not all, but a big portion of them decided to stay in Quebec, stay in Ontario. And the snowbirds that would usually go and fly to the south, to Florida, have decided as well to stay. So yeah, I think politics has a lot to do with that, at least when it comes to travel from Canada towards the US. Not sure what's fueling the other drops.
It's same questions for Jessica, right? Is it also in the end, I know people are more uncertain about traveling or economy, like would I be able to afford stuff? But in the end, they will book. What's your feeling about it? What they in the end? Because for example, Caribbean is trailing behind. Well, right now it's hurricane season, so obviously, but that's usual, right? But do you think they will be able to make this up or not? It's hard, it's not a crystal ball thing. What do you think?
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so. I mean, we see the booking windows becoming shorter and shorter over the years. So we're just anticipating that the demand is going to come later.
Well, that we're seeing for Jessica. And how about you, Eduardo, in your markets? Do you think it's going to be the same playing out?
I think it's a market. It's going to be hard to make up for those drops of 15, 20%. But it all comes down to, I think shoulder season doesn't treat everybody the same way. If you come into shoulder season, with your listings well optimized, if you come in with the right prices, if you plan ahead and try to get those slightly longer bookings, some markets allow you to attract the type of market that would like to stay for 7 days or 14 days at destination. Could be people coming for work, or could be students, could be others. There's still good opportunities, like Kyle said, to make some good revenue and not lose the profits that were made throughout the year during mid-season and high season.
All right. On this, maybe also as well, Cal, what do you see? Because for example, in the US, a big chunk of the market is domestic, right? So we talked about things like we can talk about currency levels, we can talk about international things, but in the US, also right, in a lot of many markets, it's very domestic. What are you seeing? From what you're hearing from your customers?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've picked up on the most, not just focusing on shoulder season, but really what's been happening this whole year, it seems like we got into a period where people were taking a couple of little micro vacations. Like, maybe families are taking 3 or 4 a year after COVID, and they're just making small 2 or 3 day trips, a little bit more economical. It seems like more people have focused in on the holidays and the big events in the US and are willing to kind of spend up for that. I don't think we're going to have quite as many people making those multiple travel decisions this year like we had. And that could be impactful specifically during shoulder season. One thing I think on the positive side for the US's and shoulder season is ADRs kept increasing during peak summer seasons. Supplies high, rates are still kind of high. I do think there's a majority of people that may be waiting to book that one vacation this year around the shoulder season. So going back to my previous statement about making sure you're in line and ready to go with anybody that you can. I think it's utmost priority right now. Looking at the poll that we just put in, the #1 challenge for your shoulder season, it was really interesting to see them come in because we're watching it live and seeing the numbers grow and everything. Competing on price without losing margin is runaway winner on that poll. And I think that is absolutely great to see. When I originally saw these questions, I thought we were going to be talking about the last minutes. I thought that would be most people's concern. This tells me that a lot of people are already kind of thinking ahead and not getting into that, hey, let's just wait and hope that those people finally do show up here, so to speak.
Thanks. Now let's talk about tactics now. We talk about a bit, we talk about what we're seeing in the markets, but there's also some, let's say, tactics or things we can do, let's say, in any market basically to address shoulder season. I'm going to start with you, Eduardo, on this one. Is before we a lot of this is going to have to do with flexibility, right? And a lot of this has to do with talking to owners. So first, let's maybe tackle the fact that why are we always saying, oh, shoulder season is the time to be flexible? And why does it entail talking to owners? What's your view on this?
Yeah, that's absolutely key, Thibault. Shoulder season is the time when our clients get to talk to their owners the most, because that's when owners call them and say, why am I not being booked? Can you get me some more bookings? What do we need to do? And of course, as we all as revenue managers know, pricing plays an important role in securing those bookings, right? Or applying monthly, weekly discounts the right way. So what we do, our strategy is to try to educate both our clients and the clients of our clients, the owners, on what should be their minimum rates. How low should they be willing to go, right? Because it will make a big difference. Sometimes just dropping a rate by a few dollars, that will make the difference sometimes between getting a booking and not getting anything. If I may, just very quickly to give the audience an idea, and if anybody wants to use this calculator that we built, we'll share the link afterwards. But we put together this tool where we invite our owners to enter their cost, how much you're paying on condo fees or your property management fee or insurance, all of those costs that you have regardless of whether your property is occupied or not, as well as your variable costs. If I'm going to receive a guest, how much do I have to pay for cleaning if it's not covered by the cleaning fee or laundry or anything else? And with that information, we can then make an informed decision on what the recommended minimum rate should be. How low should you be willing to go without losing your shirt and still allowing you to recover some of your costs? So without going into too much detail, we have this calculator where we say, well, this is the no-go zone. Never rent at this price because you're not even covering the cost of the soap and the cleaning and changing the bed sheets. But there's an area here that we like to use for very low season, for shoulder season, where maybe we're not recovering all of our costs, but at least it's helping us pay for some of the fixed costs that we have. And obviously after that, we're in the money. So it's a useful calculator because it allows people to understand, where they stand and make an informed decision on how low should they be willing to go without compromising their profitability. And of course, you have to see this in light of the market, right? Maybe the lowest you can go is actually higher than what the market is willing to pay. It happens in some markets that have, suffered big time during the low season. But like you said, Kyle, at the beginning, it's an opportunity, the low season, to say, yes, I'm not going to make the most money during the low season, but let me try to price my property at a level where I can ensure some good bookings that will help me cover, at least for part of my fixed expenses, so that, I don't lose my shirt and I don't lose the profits that I made during the mid-season and the high season. So being strategic about shoulder season with pricing is extremely important.
And what do you say concretely here in terms of examples, Eduardo, for this? Like, what are tactics I can have in terms of pricing or length of stay on this that you, of course, it's tricky to talk about every market, but what have you seen really work that people should think about to do or try on this?
Absolutely. Well, one of the things that obviously monitoring pacing is always super important, but it's even more important to monitor pacing as you head into the low season. You don't want to keep your rates very high in the hopes that, well, maybe someone will rent us and then have to drop your rates way too much during the low season, right? I think we try to inform our clients, let's be realistic on what the rates should be during the low season, and let's start pricing accordingly in advance so that we don't find ourselves with almost no inventory and having to heavily discount at the last minute. So pacing is something extremely important and something that we always monitor, and any revenue manager, of course, here in the call, I'm sure you all monitor your pacing, but it becomes even more important during low season. As well as we try to employ, we like to play around a lot with length of stay discounts, because of course, if someone is going to pay a low rate, I'd rather have someone paying a low rate, but they're staying for 7 days or 14 days. So I have a very high occupancy and therefore a better RevPAR than having low rates, but having only 1 or 2 night bookings, right? So it's like you get the worst of both worlds. So if you're going to rent low, let's try to make it up by having longer stays. Those are some of the things that we use.
I'm going to shift now to Kyle on the same question, and then Jessica. So Kyle, same thing for you. Again, we hear that's the time to be flexible. So what kind of things or tactics people should do? And then when do you actually need to talk about owners to get the buy-in on what you want to do?
I think from the PriceLabs perspective, like what could we do inside of PriceLabs? One of the big things that's a simple change would be look at taking it a little bit more aggressive. We have an occupancy based adjustment, which is a part of our algorithm. You can turn that and make it a little bit more aggressive just so it moves it slightly. That would be one suggestion there. I think it's very important to make sure that you're flexible and that you're thinking like a guest. So obviously it's low season. We're not going to be able to target a lot of people, or I'm sorry, shoulder season, not low season. Shoulder season, we're not going to be able to target a bunch of 7-night stays, so to speak, if that's not what the market's dictating. So be visible. Make sure that you're going in and not being too restrictive with your minimum length of stay. You know, if you're running a 3-night and you're struggling to book, pull that lever first. Like go down to a 2-night and make sure that you're able to be seen. If somebody still wants that 3-night, they're going to book the 3 nights. But I think that's really important to make sure that your minimum length of stay is absolutely in line with the market, if not better than what the market is saying, so to speak. Big fan of using discounting mechanisms. So like if you have a weekly discount set up, I think that's very useful for these time periods, especially if you're in a market, you know, if you're in Florida trying to get some of those snowbirds early on. You know, a lot of those people may be coming in January. Try to get them in Thanksgiving. And the only way that you can possibly do that is by having your rate ready to go and by having your minimum length of stay ready to go as well. One thing I do want to point out, just because I don't know if we'll have the opportunity during this, I think it's really important for everybody to understand too, that you may not be able to make, you know, all the money in the world during shoulder season, but it's really important to keep your conversions rolling during shoulder season. Because if let's say we have a minimum price and it's $400 and I can't get anything booked up for 2 or 3 months on these OTAs, that's going to inevitably hurt what I can make during the peak season as well. It's going to hurt my visibility. You have to do a little bit of moving and tinkering, especially if you're playing the OTA game heavily. If you're 100% direct bookings, maybe you don't have to worry about it quite as much. But that would be my main advice when we're thinking about this. Yes, we're going to make probably less than what you would want to versus peak season, but this period really helps us during peak season as well. It's a good time to get those good reviews in there as well.
Exactly, Alex. I like what you're thinking. You're sort of also investing in the future, right? And we'll talk about this with Jessica, because obviously she has another high season coming up after this. But I'm staying with you, Kyle, on this one, because shoulder season to me, when I think about this, but tell me what you think, right? It's also very tricky in a sense that suddenly, you know, summer in the US, for example, I really care about week-long stays, high ADR. Suddenly I'm like, you know what, those weekends, they kind of, you know, long weekends are becoming very interesting in the short season. Not so making sure I also get weekends, and suddenly I'm starting to think, oh, maybe you have to differentiate weekday pricing, weekday lengths of stay. And yet, I don't know about the US, I forgot that I used to live there. But in Europe, for example, right in the middle of shoulder season, you have school holidays, a school break. And that's like, it's like where your short lengths of stay and lower prices, like, oh, wow, don't forget that. So I'm guessing I find it's very tricky, right? Because in the end, I could argue that high season summer is like, yeah, just long stays and just like, it looks kind of tricky to me. What do you think? Do you think it's trickier because you have to think weekday versus weekends, and you have to not forget that you have school holidays in the middle? Well, how do you think through it? Or Thanksgiving, obviously. How do you think through it?
I'll be honest, I think of it a little bit differently, kind of going with that opportunity standpoint. To me, there's almost no risk with going and trying something different during this period. There's huge amount of risk if you go in and try to switch something up during your peak season, like a huge amount. And there's a lot of pressure to make sure that you're meeting your goals during peak season. You know, if you're, and Jessica, maybe I assume that the French Alps probably going to be a similar way. Like you're going to get 95% of your revenue from those really, really peak moments. Hey, if we can add an extra 10 to 15% during these lower times, it's fantastic. So I genuinely think that we just need to kind of really, really prioritize this time, understand that it's a full calendar that we're looking at. But ultimately, you know, if what we saw earlier, if you're in the US, ADR is down slightly across the market, occupancy is down slightly. Think about how you performed last year. Most of you, if you were booked up, you were booked up on weekends. That's probably going to come. That to me is a huge indicator right there. Hey, go play with your weekdays a little bit. Maybe instead of talking to your owners about, hey, let's have a minimum price of 120, maybe you ask them, hey, I'm going to get you to 120, but can I go down to $70? Or, you know, I'm just spitting a number out, but can I go to 70 for this day and then go up to 240 for this day to kind of balance it out? There's so many things that you can try with this, and it's super important to take what you hear about the market and communicate that to your owners ahead of time, so that you're not having to convince them to let you pull a lever when you absolutely have to do it. You want to have that conversation preemptively. So sorry about that, Jessica. Let's pass it over to you to get your take on that.
It's good. It's exactly what we want to talk about, right? The tactics and things. And Jessica, we've been teasing a bit about how is it in your market, and getting curious to see again same things for you. Is it also about flexibility? We talk about, you know, school break being, I don't know how it is, very important for you, and how much you need to talk to owners at that moment of the year.
Yeah, flexibility is super important for us as well. So we change our calendar settings to be as flexible as possible. So, you know, we do short stay pricing, arrivals and departures any day of the week. We make sure that guests can book up to very last minute. So we set our calendars up for success. And we do have 2 weeks of school holidays in the middle of the shoulder season, and the pace of bookings and the booking patterns are very different. For instance, during the school holidays, we have a super high repeat guest rate, 36%. We also have a higher booking window, higher length of stay. So we have to adjust our targeting strategies accordingly. And, you know, educating owners by sharing data, I think, is the most important part of our job. It's for us to provide the data to inform the decisions that they need to make to optimize their rental success.
And we're going to talk about marketing more at large, and I was saying with you, Jessica, because you started talking about you have repeat guests and that you adjusting your strategies. I think it's no secrets if people don't know about OVO. OVO, you're very specific in the sense that you have many, your share of direct booking is amazing. And in my head, I'm just wondering, shoulder season, how do you go about, do you go direct as well? Do you open a bit more the channels to get non-direct bookings? How do you think through distribution, marketing in that shoulder season?
So we list on several other platforms all year round, and we rely on them a lot more during shoulder season. So they take up a higher share of our revenue during shoulder season. But we also focus on repeat guests, direct marketing. I think what's really important is understanding our guests, who they are, why they're coming to the Alps, and just pulling the different levers based on who our guests are. So, for example, if we know that you know, we're just going to focus more on some distribution channels at some time of the year. So we just adapt based on our guests and what we see in our data.
And what's your usual share of, if you can say that, of direct bookings? First question for me, and what is it like in that specific part of the year? And I'm sure when people heard that you're getting so many people to come back, what's our secret to get so many people to come back? So there's two questions. What's your, because again, maybe one explains the other, but what's your usual share of direct bookings?
I can't reveal all our secrets, but average direct booking rate year round is between 75 and 80%. And during the autumn season, we have 60% direct bookings. And then we have Airbnb, then booking.com, Vrbo, and others.
Yeah, because if you ever go attend any event in Europe, you see you're an award-winning company because your brand is very, very good as well, right? I think that's also something to say about that, right? The power of your website, your brand. So it's yeah, you can dream about this. It's pretty impressive. How about you, Eduardo? What are things being different in terms of maybe marketing, distribution, listings? What's special about shoulder season?
Right. Well, our team of revenue managers, we always try to, use anything at our disposal in terms of special promotions, whether it's on booking.com or on Airbnb. We most of the things that have been mentioned today, like being flexible, we of course try to be much more flexible during shoulder season, but sometimes we plan ahead, right? 6-7 months in advance, 8 months in advance, trying to get those longer bookings. And of course, if we don't see those longer bookings coming in, we of course open up the calendar to say, okay, we'll take a 2 or 3 night, so definitely we do that. We also try to take some time during the low season and year round, but especially during low season, to make sure that our listings are visible, that they can be found. You would be surprised how many times a listing cannot be found or has low visibility only because some key amenities that the property does have not been checkmarked. In today's world of AI, and using AI for everything, we actually, if you don't mind me sharing my screen quickly, we came up with a tool as well that allows us to measure how our listings are performing, in all of the different aspects: listings, description, pictures, amenities, and whatnot. And we use AI because AI can evaluate a listing very quickly based on best practices, and it allows us to tell us what's wrong, what we could be changing, how is our click-through rate, how's our impression rate, are we missing captions, are we missing some key pictures, whatever else, right? So we use these tools extensively in order to try to make sure that listings do show up, especially during the low season, right? Accidental blocks is something that we also keep an eye for. Quite a few times people would block their properties during low season for maintenance, which does make sense to use that time for maintenance, but sometimes the maintenance won't happen, but the block remains, right? And there's 2 weeks there that they're wondering, why are they not getting booked? Well, because you blocked it, right? So those are the type of things that we really pay a lot of attention throughout the year, but more so during low season.
Thanks. Cal, how about you? And I don't know at some point how much of a teaser we can give to the new tool called Listing Optimizer coming up. But already right now, what do you see in terms of marketing, different changes that people are using to get maybe more bookings in shoulder season? What's working?
I think it's important to rely on, if you have people that are really, I want to get back to what Jessica was talking about, because I think it's so important, like the way that you approach your customers and thinking like that guest that's going to be staying is super, super important to building those recurring guests. So if you're in a economical type market and we're entering shoulder season, you need to understand who it is that's going to be coming. It's probably going to be families that may be, like I said, trying to get that one vacation in. Maybe they couldn't make time, but I think it's really important to understand who it is that you're trying to serve. In terms of, spread, I kind of go with Jessica. I would say, you don't necessarily want to be spread too far with OTAs, and kind of focus in on some during this time. I think it's tough to figure out exactly, but you can strategically target some of these OTAs. So going back to my previous comments, you know, if we were in peak season during summer, and let's say our review score slipped a little bit, we went from like a 4.9 to a 4.74. Right now would be a good time, and I'm saying that as if referring to Airbnb. That would be a good time to try to target Airbnb to get some increases, have a little bit better guest communication, to really try to make some small tweaks to kind of perfect your listing, so to speak. Going with what Eduardo was saying, the tool he showed, PriceLabs has a tool coming out. It's called Listing Optimizer as well. That's going to be, this time period is perfect for us to go in and look and make sure we have our photos correct. That's a big thing over here in the US. There's a couple of markets that are like what Jessica has, where you've got the ski season and then you've got a nice summer season. If you're going in the summer, or if you're exiting summer, right now is the perfect time for you to put your ski photos in there. It's the perfect time to change your listing around a little bit to make it geared more towards those people that you're trying to get in right now. You know, so if your verbiage that you're using is a little bit more high end and you're trying to sell it as a luxury unit, maybe we go in and tweak it for a month or two and make it more about, hey, come live the rich lifestyle at an affordable price. It's all about how you approach the folks. So that's kind of how I would go with that one, Thibault.
Sorry, go ahead, Jessica.
Sorry. I was going to bounce off what you were saying about amenities, Eduardo, earlier on, which is something that we haven't really touched on. At Ovo, we're really big on focusing on amenities, because if the destination is not very exciting during shoulder season, then we need to find a reason for people for them to come. And so at Ovo, we mainly work with high-end chalets, large capacity, and our top performers in autumn have a minimum of two amenities, and the best performing amenity is an indoor pool. But obviously, we can't always advise owners on installing an indoor pool. So we usually tend to suggest a hot tub. And our data shows that owners who've added a hot tub have generated 20,000 euros in gross booking value, in additional 20,000 euros in gross booking value after installing the hot tub. And on average, they sell 40 more nights a year. So it just allows them to differentiate themselves in shoulder season and to stand out in the listings. And so that is a lever that we also can pull, but it's also because, you know, we're very niche, and this is something that we can do.
And Jessica, sorry, Eduardo, stepping over you real quick. I was going to say on what Jessica is saying, it gets to the point too, like where I live, if you don't put a hot tub in, you're almost underneath the market, because so many people at this point have started to get to it. So being focused on those amenities is huge, and then being able to add a little bit extra in there as well. Sorry about stepping over you, Eduardo.
No, it's perfect. And Kyle, just wanted to elaborate on what you mentioned about the review score. Many times we find ourselves with listings that have low review scores. And as we all know, and we've actually done a lot of analysis on this subject, what gets you visibility is conversion, and having ideally like a guest favorite or super host or whatnot. And it's low season. It's very painful to have to lower your rate to get good ratings during the high season, right? It's extremely painful to have to discount at that time. So it's better to say, well, I'm already suffering a bit during low season. Let me discount it quite extensively to get, you know, all of those bookings coming in and improve my ratings. We all know that the most important is value for money. So when people realize like, oh my God, I'm staying at a beautiful place, I only paid $100 for the night, they're very likely to leave a very, very good review. So it's a time of the year where you can try to collect as many good reviews as possible. So we shouldn't discard that. That's very, very important and very valuable, so that we come into the high season with a good score, better visibility, and that's where we make all the money.
Thanks a lot. There's still 130 people. We're at 150 at the peak. If there are questions, it's time. You can feel free, people, to ask questions in the Q&A section, or even a chat at this point. I think there's a question, maybe that will be for you, Kyle, and maybe it's a question to see directly with the customer, but somebody's saying that Over the years, I've seen that people booking a month in November or January will pay approximately £1,200 working away from home, set free, and my agent's price using PriceLabs is approximately £2,000. Why differential difference? I'm guessing it's kind of hard without seeing the count
Yeah.
what we're exactly talking about, but that's maybe something to see. I don't know if you can say anything
Yeah.
already with just this minimal information, but let's try.
Yeah, I think I can. And thank you for bringing this up, Diane. That's a good topic for everybody to kind of think about. So one of the things to look at, that €1,200 that you're talking about, again, we don't have the context of it, but my assumption is that that was probably before any type of a dynamic pricing tool that's kind of looking at demand factors and all of that. There are certain things within PriceLabs algorithm where we're looking at demand factors and how it's pacing versus last year. And if the pacing is ahead a little bit, we can see spikes in there. What I would say, just purely the simplest thing to look at from this, on that listing, if you are in PriceLabs, take a look at your base price and make sure that that base price is in line for what you're trying to accomplish. That to me is the number one thing that I would take a look at. And then if for some reason, you don't see that you want to make that move down on the base price to get those rates kind of where you want them, reach out to us at support@pricelabs.co and somebody will help you take a look at that specific case and figure it out for you.
Thanks a lot. First time ever I see so many people with so few questions. So I think it's maybe that we are very clear. But so is there one more? And I did promise this, right? Oh, there's another question. Thank you. Please talk, because the one thing is like the one last gem that each of you may want to share with everybody. But let me take that question and then have each of you prepare this one big gem, one last takeaway you want to share with everyone. Question from Nana. She's asking, please talk about competitive markets like London with short booking windows. Haven't really had a shoulder season. Who can talk about big urban markets like this? I think Eduardo talked about Madrid, for example. All these kind of markets are maybe a bit no real shoulder season, but still short booking windows. Any kind of advice here? Anyone?
Eduardo, Jessica, if y'all want to take it, feel free. If not, I'll chime in.
We'll let you start.
Yeah, I don't operate in an urban area, so
Well, we do operate in urban areas and quite a few, and yes, London is a great market, right? And it's quite stable. Indeed, you have a lot of last minute bookings, but again, it doesn't necessarily have to be like that. Sometimes with some good planning and good pacing review, you can actually price it in a way that you secure longer stays or longer in advance, so that once again, it's very troubling to have to wait until 3-4 days before to get a booking, and most of the times you would end up discounting those last minute bookings. So in markets like London, in markets like Mexico City, in markets like Madrid, it's very important to try to get those bookings once again ahead of time. Pacing, right? That's what we always have to be focused on, and London is no exception.
Anything else to add, Kyle? We move to another question. What do you think?
I think we can move to another question on that one real quick, though. We do have a lot of cities that are similar in the U.S. Nashville, Tennessee, San Diego interact very similar to what she's describing with London. The best thing I can say is try to beat that booking window. If you're starting to see that the bookings are on average rolling in, 5-10 days out, try to make sure that you are looking ahead, and instead of getting in and looking at your rates for that time frame from today until 10 days from now, try to look at that time frame 10 days to 30 days ahead, and just train where you're looking at and make tweaks there to try to influence it as much as possible. I'm a very big proponent of A/B testing, and if you see something is happening, like she's very aware they've got short booking windows, how do we approach it? Try to lengthen them out a little bit. If you have to go in and make a manual tweak or something like that, maybe decrease pricing just a little bit before that window. just to try it out and see if that helps you out.
And here you would take part of your portfolio and test that new strategy,
Yes.
your A/B test, and see whether that's working.
Yeah, and in all honesty, when we get to our big thing or whatever, that's what I'm going to be talking about is A/B testing, but always A/B test with your units that aren't going to destroy your overall portfolio. You don't want to put in one of your big money people to A/B test and be risky with.
Thanks. Question from Thomas. Does PriceLabs work with free to book channel manager? I do not think so. I checked the list. I do not see free to book. We do work with 150 channel managers, but do send, if you don't have your contact, do send an email at support@pricelabs.co, because usually we're pretty good at, if we can see the opportunity, of course, we're integrating even new channel managers, we're adding 2 to 3 per month. So let us know, right? Happy to help to see how we can help you out. Another question here from Orlando, which is what is the best way to complement channel discounts with pricing tools like PriceLabs? So I'm guessing you already put discounts on your OTA channels, and how does that work with PriceLabs on pricing?
Yeah, I think in that sense, it works in conjunction with us, but keep in mind, depending on which OTA you're using these discounts on, it may take a little bit of power away from PriceLabs. So for example, on Airbnb, if you're using their discount mechanisms on there, they're going to take an average of your rates over the past, I think, 30 days. And that's what they discount from. It's a mechanism they have in there to keep people from gaming the system and dropping their rates down real low and then increasing them and all that. But that is something to keep in mind, that when you're using PriceLabs, if you use those discounts specifically on Airbnb, it becomes an average of your PriceLabs rates. It does not stick to what that is. So if you have heavy discounting in PriceLabs and you have discounts on Airbnb, this heavy discounting for PriceLabs will not be as impactful because it's going to be averaging that really low rate with the rate that you had from 25 days ago and the rate that you had from 26 days ago. So keep that in mind. I'm a proponent of, unless you are really, really hands-on and thoroughly understand the channels, the distribution and revenue management, try to keep it all in one place if at all possible. We have weekly discounts and monthly discounts in PriceLabs. I would suggest setting them up there. If you really want the strike through pricing, which is what most people say they want by using those discounts, you can set it up directly on those OTAs, but you run into that caveat. So
weird time. I hope everybody can stay a couple more minutes, hopefully. Question for Eduardo. Kent is asking, how does Angel Host test for inelasticity? I can't say that. The opposite of elasticity. Inelasticity, where we're just giving away more money rather than driving better performance during shoulder season. So how do you?
Yeah, it's a good question. So how do we test for price elasticity? We do. Normally what you do is you start increasing the prices a little bit, and then you see how your booking velocity and how your pacing reacts, right? So you don't want to just sell at a low price for the sake of selling at a low price. You always try to test the market, but you also don't want to test it too long and then miss out on getting those bookings. So you test elasticity by increasing prices slightly and measuring what happens in terms of booking velocity. And that's why it's critical to know how many bookings do you get this time of the year on average per week or per month, right? Or per day. And it's not about giving money away. As we mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, it's very important to determine what is your real minimum rate. You don't want to be renting at a price where you're not covering your variable cost of delivering the service, but you should be willing to rent at a price that at least helps you cover some of your costs so that your profits, your yearly profits, do not evaporate during the low season.
Thanks a lot. Two last questions, but let's go fast on this one. So Joey's asking, one of you can take that question and somebody else take the second one. We have seen decreases in lengths of stays and booking windows during our peak seasons. How have you adjusted pricing, minimum stay settings to compensate?
Yeah, so I'll take that one and let Eduardo have the next one. So for this one, I think what Joey's asking is from PriceLabs perspective, like what are we doing to kind of respond? I believe that's where this question's come from. And if it's not Joey, I'm very sorry for how I respond. But basically what we're doing is we're constantly like every day, every OTA looking and seeing what's changing with demand patterns. And those are instantly happening within your rates. So if you have the setup in PriceLabs to where it is pretty much basically PriceLabs determined, you don't have a bunch of customizations on, you should see your rates start to reflect market driven rates. One additional thing that we came out with recently is our dynamic minimum stay settings as well. So just like having dynamic pricing that responds to the market and moves how the market's moving, we've also got those minimum stay settings that you can set up that instead of you having it hard coded, like, hey, I'm going to have 3-night minimum stay, it's going to drop to 2 nights when I get 7 nights out. You can now select something that is PriceLabs determined, whether it's short-term, mid-term, or long-term rentals, and essentially have PriceLabs adjust that for you based off the market and based off performance as well. So if you had those issues and you're not hard set on doing something with your minimum stay, I would suggest giving that a try. And again, A/B test it, put it on one of the units that's not a huge moneymaker and see how it works for you.
Thanks. Last question. What are the basics of pacing? Nobody doesn't asking, what's the basics of pacing?
Well, the basics of pacing is you look at how many bookings had you already secured this time last year for any period moving forward, whether it's the next 15 days, the next 30 days, for the next month, the next 2 months. And it's an indicator. Of course, you don't always have pacing. Maybe you have a new listing, so you don't know what the pacing should be. So you need to have some historical data. When you don't have historical data for your own unit, you try to use comps, the comparable units in your area to see how they're pacing. So we use that extensively. And just a tip that one of my revenue managers just shared with me on the chat, he says that one of the ways to test for price elasticity, if you're lucky enough to have multiple units in one building, you can take 1 or 2 of them and try to increase the price and see how it responds. So without risking your entire inventory, you just put 1 or 2 out there and you start testing, right? It's sometimes hard to do that A/B testing when you have very different properties, but when you have very similar ones, that's an opportunity to do some testing there.
Thanks. And my apologies, everybody for being over time. But Jessica, 2 questions for you. So what is the one last piece takeaway you want to share with everybody? And if people want to contact you, how to best reach out?
My piece of advice would be spend time to understand your market and get to know your guests. And if anyone wants to contact me, LinkedIn, Jessica Mollard.
Merci. Thanks. Kyle, how about you?
Yeah, you can find me pretty much on these webinars, RevLabs podcast if you want to. I'm also on LinkedIn. Always happy to help. I'm a geek when it comes to revenue management. So if you've ever got a question,
and your last
shoot me a message. I'll try to help as much as possible.
And your last piece of takeaway was about A/B testing, right?
Yes, basically what I want you to think about and take away from Kyle is try to take, if you've got a couple of listings, take one and change your mindset and be risky during this time period with it. Try something that you never would have tried. Go in there and see what happens when you lower your rate to $100 and you've never gotten to $100. Go see what happens when you tweak your minimums. Just find one unit if you can, one homeowner that's willing to let you learn, really. But I think this is the perfect opportunity for you to get in there, start pulling some levers, see what works, and then you learn a lot from experience. But the one thing I want people to take away is be a little riskier during this time. Not across the board, but pick one to try to be a little riskier on.
Love that. Eduardo, how about you? Last takeaway and how to contact you.
Right. So I think the link is right here on the chat via LinkedIn. If anyone wants us to audit a listing, you can also follow this link. But my key takeaway is metrics, right? We love numbers. We live and die by numbers. So you have to look at your pacing. You need to look at what is your impression rate, your click-through rate. You need to make decisions informed on real data, real costs. So for us, that has always been a winning strategy, right? When we base ourselves on data that we obtain through PriceLabs, for example, from historical data, from information that Airbnb gives us in terms of visibility. We try to really use as many numbers as possible to maximize the revenues.
Thank you so much. There's still close to 100 people connected. We're way beyond time. Usually I'm on time, so sorry about that, but hopefully you see there's a lot of value.